Hey folks, we usually talk about retirement planning, tax planning, retirement income strategies. Today we're going to switch it up a little bit and get you geared for college education savings. If you can take a look at the cost of college today, where it was maybe 10 or 20 years ago, the costs are astounding. We want to make sure that you are prepared if you have kids, so stick around and enjoy the ride. Welcome everyone. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. My name's Joey Anderson, president here at Pure Financial Advisors, and of course my partner, Big Al Clopine.
How you doing, Joe?
He is a resident expert in college planning. He's put two youngsters.
I put two kids through college. You're correct.
Yes. So we're just going to quiz you, Big Al.
See how my experience was?
Yes.
Because they got through and it's paid for.
Yes, I was with them through some of those times, and I'll tell you what, it was a little stressful. So we're trying to get rid of the stress. That's today's financial focus. So let's take a look at some numbers. How much is college? It's expensive. If you take a look at average private university, it's around $51,000 per year. $51,000. Now, of course, if you want to look at local or state schools, community colleges, you know, the numbers range all over the place. But 50 grand, that's a pretty big number if you want to put your kids through a private school. Second, how many of you are prepared for this? 61% of families with children do not have any sort of financial plan for their college education. Let's change the stats today, folks. Let's dive in and bring in the big man.
So today we're talking college, Joe, as you said. So let's dive in and figure out how to do this. Number one, you got to figure out what you think the expenses are going to be. And inflation has been higher in college costs than other types of costs. So we'll get into that a little bit. You need to develop a savings plan to cover those expenses, explore your investment options, right? So you're going to save money, you need to invest it to be able to get there. And then finally, it's adjusting and updating your plan as necessary. Because life changes, your circumstances will probably change. There may be years where you can't fund the college education as much as you'd like to. There might be some catch-up years. So anyway, that's what we're going to get into today, Joe. And you're right, as a father that put two kids through college, I think it's a pretty important topic.
You know, it's extremely important because what we find is that people jeopardize their own retirement to put their kids through school, right? They're taking money out of their 401k plans, they're taking money out of savings. Maybe they stop saving altogether and they start funding college, which is a great thing, don't get me wrong. However, you can still get loans for college. You can't necessarily get a loan, you know, for your overall retirement. So starting out as estimating the expenses is key.
Yeah.
Well, how much is the school gonna cost? What school is it gonna be? Right? And it doesn't matter. Let's say my kid's going to go to Harvard. And maybe when he graduates high school, he's not going to get into Harvard. Right? Maybe he has a little bit lower IQ or she has a little bit lower IQ, right?
Right.
But you can at least plan big to figure out what you want to do and then start working the numbers backward, just like with any other planning that you would do.
So really estimating expenses, that's kind of the first thing you got to figure out here. And so we've got this little rule of thumb to try to help you do that. So the first thing you need to do is figure out what college that you would like your son or daughter to go to, or the one that they would like to go to, and look at the current cost, right? So maybe it's $50,000 a year, whatever the number is, right? So for every $10,000, then it's a factor of 1. And you multiply that by 2,000, and you multiply that by your child's age to figure out how much you should have saved at a particular age. So Joe, why don't you go through an example, because
clear as mud.
That wasn't a very good explanation.
Let's do this. We got an example here. Little Joey wants to go to school. Okay, Joey's 14 years old. So you're sitting, you know what, I haven't saved a dime for Joey. What are we going to do here? So this rule of thumb formula of saying, hey, Joey's going to go to a private school and we're going to pay $50,000 a year. He's 14 years old. So it's the 2,000 rule. So 2,000 is what you start with. How old's little Joey? We already talked about it. He's 14. So take your child times 2,000, right? And then if you want to go big, go private. So $50,000, you just take that factor, divide it by 10,000. I'll really explain that well. But it's 5. Okay, 50,000, it's 5. If it's 20,000, it's 2. If it's 10,000, it's 1. You get the gist. So 2,000 times 14 times 5 is 140 grand. So if little Joey wants to go to school and it's going to cost mom and dad $50,000 a year, at age 14, you need $140,000 in the bank, okay? So that's that formula. So if you look at, hey, you know what? Joey's going to go to a community college. You know what? I'm looking at these numbers. He's going to the Army, right? That's what happened to me, right? When I graduated high school.
That was your offer from your parents.
Right. I was like, Mom, Dad, I'm really excited about college. They're like, what are you talking about? No, I would get brochures, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. They're like, it's a great place to start.
Sure.
So I just packed up and I moved to Florida, and I paid for it on my own. So anyway, this is kind of a good rule of thumb, because a lot of times with any goal, right, we really don't know what to save or what the number is. This at least helps you to see what is that finish line. If you're nowhere near 140, don't worry about it. At least you can start planning. If you think you're going to pay for a private school, room and board, out of pocket, and you don't even have this close, good luck, right? The kid's going to be a genius, and he'll get scholarships. Right?
Well,
full ride. He's going to be an all-star baseball player.
Yeah, and of course, this is thinking about if you want to pay the whole thing. Maybe you want your son or daughter to pay for some of this. There may be student loans. So there's all kinds of ways to kind of skin the cat here. But this just gives you an idea how much that you need to have saved. And so, Joe, and I guess if people have a plan versus not having a plan, it makes a pretty big difference on how much they've saved and whether they're going to succeed, right?
Imagine that, Alan.
We talk about having a plan, and here you go.
So look at this. Here's a stat. For people that have started a plan, right? So 95% of them, they have a lot more money saved than people that don't necessarily have a plan, right? They feel that they're on track. Half of them feel like they're on track. That's okay. The other half is like, hey, we're out, but we know what we need to do, right? They save a lot more. They have the right type of savings plan. This is a good estimate of how much money that people should be saving. Right, so again, it kind of gets you on track. So I have a plan, and if I'm looking at, all right, well, 4-year public university, if I'm taking a look at these numbers here, do I want to pay for a third, a half, or maybe I want to fund the whole thing? So if your child is just born and you want to pay for the whole thing, you got to start saving about $500 a month. Set aside $500. You're like, I can't afford that. All right, pay for a third. It's $150 a month. Maybe you can't do that. Maybe it's $50 a month. It's just getting started. If your kid's 6 years old, you can see the numbers go to $870 versus $472. If they're 12 years old, it's about $2,000. So the name of the game here, Al, is what?
Start early. Yeah, and that's exactly right, because this is assuming that you haven't saved anything to get to certain ages. So the sooner you start saving, as always with financial planning and investments, the better you'll be.
All right, we got to take a break. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, click on our special offers, the ABCs of college funding. ABCs of college funding, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. That's our gift to you. We'll be back in just a second. Hey, welcome back to the show. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Joe Anderson, Big Al hanging out, talking about college funding today. You can go to our website at yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that special offer. It's the ABCs of college funding, the ABCs. What we're talking about is saving, right? You got to start at some point. And a lot of us, we always procrastinate a little bit. And then when it comes time to it, we might jeopardize other goals to look at the immediate goal that's right in front of us. And college kind of hits us with a Mack truck. It's like, oh my gosh, my kid's a junior and I haven't done anything yet. We want to give you some tools and tricks just to make sure that you're prepared, and some ideas for you to make sure that you're at least going down the right path. And I think the right savings plan, Alan, is probably the next step we want to go into.
Well, I think so, and there's really, Joe, three basic types, right? So there's the 529 plan. A lot of you have probably heard of these plans. That's a great plan because you can get a lot of money in there. It grows tax-free if it's used for college. So that can be a great plan. The Coverdell education account is kind of like a 529 plan. But it's a lot smaller limits as to what you can put in. And then prepaid college tuition. If you have a university that you think your son or daughter is going to want to go to, those plans can be great because you lock in current tuition costs, and if you have a very young child, that can be a pretty good advantage. So Joe, maybe let's start with the 529 plan and go through some of the pros and cons.
And I think there's multiple ways to do this, right? We're just going the ABCs high level. And one of the most popular plans out there today is the 529 plan. And these are state-sponsored plans. One of the biggest, I think, confusion out there with these plans is that we live in California. But if I wanted to start a 529 plan, I could start a Utah 529 plan or a Minnesota 529 plan. It doesn't matter because the state of California doesn't have any tax advantages when you put money in. However, other states might have an opportunity to either get a tax deduction on the state tax side, or it has some different tax savings implications by putting it into the plan if they save into their own state plan.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And some states, I think Pennsylvania maybe is one, but there's several states that actually do allow a deduction. So it's not only a deduction to get the money into the plan, but it grows tax-free if it's used for education later. California is not one of those, as you mentioned.
So depending on what state that you live in, so you could choose the California plan if you choose to, but maybe you don't like because the state picks it out. And it's TIAA-CREF, let's say, here in California, but you really like Vanguard funds, or you want to use dimensional funds, or you want to use this or that, whatever. You could go with any type of state. And here's the pros of the 529 plans is that every dollar that you put in here grows 100% tax deferred, and then when you pull it out, it's tax-free if it's a qualified distribution. It's very similar to the Roth IRA that we talk about quite a bit in regards to retirement. The 529 plan is the equivalent type of plan for college funding. It's an after-tax contribution. It grows tax deferred. If used for college, 100% tax-free. The cons. Well, let's say you save too much, or the kid gets that scholarship, right? Full ride, or they do end up going to the military, right? And all of a sudden you have all this money sitting in these accounts, and you take it out, well, you're going to get taxed and penalized because it wasn't a qualified distribution. There could be some high fees in some of the investments. That's why you want to do the due diligence of the 529 plan. Do I want to pick California or Utah, or Minnesota, or Wisconsin, or whatever? There's limited investment options within the plan. So that's why you could shop the 50 states, right? Or you could select your own state. It really depends. So you got a little homework to do here, but the crux of it, it's an after-tax contribution, gross tax deferred, pull it out for qualified, 100% tax-free.
Yeah, and I think it's important to talk about the beneficiaries. So maybe you've got a son or daughter, and you've set this up for them. They're the beneficiary, and they don't go to college. So now what? So you can change the beneficiary. You can use it for another son or daughter. You could use it for yourself. You could use it for a grandchild. But you do have to use it for college. If you don't use it for college, when you pull the money out, it's fully taxable, the income, plus penalty. So that's not something that you want to do. And Joe, I think another plan is a Coverdell. It's similar. It's a lot lower limits in terms of what you can put in.
This is the IRA, right, of retirement plans,
right.
Or I mean of college plans, right? So again, you get the tax-free growth, you get tax-free withdrawals, right? You get numerous investment options because you're going to go to your custodian, let's say TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, wherever, and you're going to open up a custodial Coverdell account where it's a shell again that you can invest in basically anything that you want. Those dollars will grow tax-free. You can then take those dollars out tax-free if they're used for college again. But it's income-based, so you have to qualify. Right? There's yearly contribution limits, which are relatively low. We just looked at, you needed to save $140,000. You're not going to get anywhere near that with the Coverdell unless you pick a really good investment. So if I'm looking at the pros and cons of the 529 in the Coverdell, it's $2,000 is what you can put in. It's great, right? It's something, but it's not a whole heck of a lot. The 529 plan, you could put a few $100,000 in there if you wanted to. There's no contribution limits, but there's some gift limits. Al, you want to touch on that a little bit?
So the way this works with a 529 plan is you can put in $15,000 as a gift, but the IRS actually allows you to do 5 years all at one time. So that's $75,000. So you can get a really quick head start on these. That's why in many ways it's so much better than the Coverdell, because not only is the $15,000 limit, but you can put $75,000 in year one. Coverdell is $2,000 per year.
And that would be per spouse. if they're
That's
married.
right.
So
That's
you
right.
could double that up and almost get a couple $100,000 in there. There is no income phase out for the 529 plan. So if you do want to fully front load it, you can do that. There's no income limits. There's no age limitations at all. Coverdell, you got to be 30 or else it's distributed. And then 95,000 and 190 is those AGI limitations for you to take advantage of it. I haven't seen a Coverdell IRA in years.
I don't think I have either. I mean, pretty much everyone uses a 529 plan.
Basically, this is your Cadillac, that's the Yugo.
Right. But the other idea is prepaid college education. And so a couple things here. It needs to be a college in your own state. So you need to be a resident of the state. But here's the benefit, really, is you can lock in the tuition costs. So today's tuition costs, you basically, that's what you're going to get. And so what happens with prepaid tuition plans is you pay a lump sum right now, and then essentially you don't have to worry about investments. The university is doing that for you. And then when your child goes to the college, the tuition and fees are already covered, right? Now then the question is, well, what if they don't go to that college? So typically you get your money back. In some cases you get a little bit of increase. Some plans allow you to have a 2% increase per year. So other plans allow you to transfer it to other universities. So it just depends upon the plan and the university that you pick. But if you have a college that you really think your kids are going to go to, and they have a plan like this, it might be a good way to kind of lock in today's costs.
So you're forcing the child to go to the school that you want them to go to.
That's right. They're going to my alma mater, University of California, San Diego.
All right, there's Big Al. All right, we got to take a break. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, click on our special offers, the ABCs of college funding. ABCs of college funding, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. That's our gift to you. We'll be back in just a second. Hey, welcome back to the program. Show's called Your Money or Wealth. Joe Anderson, Big Al, Clopine, talking 529 plans, Coverdells. Talking college funding. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, click on the ABCs of college funding. ABCs of college funding, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Let's go to the true-false question.
Transferring the funds from a Coverdell to a 529 is always a qualified distribution, so no income tax or penalty is due. Joe, true or false?
Yeah, that is true. Because everyone hates the Coverdell. They're like, get me rid of this thing. I want to go to the new, more sexy 529 plan. So yes, if you do have a Coverdell and you have a 529, if you want to open up a 529 plan, you can transfer those funds into the 529 plan, income tax free, penalty free. So you can just have one plan if you choose to. So
let's talk about the cost of college. The inflation has been higher for college than almost anything else. And this will show you in about the last 20 years, it's tripled, which is almost 6% per year. That's been a lot more than inflation. And to show you that in real numbers, let's take a look to what it used to be. So this is a private college. This is tuition and fees, public college on the bottom. So you can see we went from $8,600 in the 60s to $33,000 at this point. And in terms of a public, $2,000 to $9,500. So I'll look at when I went to college. So that was actually right in here. 75 was my first year. So I was probably between 10 and 11,000, Joe.
I was just a twinkle in
my
father's eye.
You weren't, were you around? You weren't around then.
No.
Anyway, I guess the point here, though, is college costs keep going up, and they keep going up more than inflation. And it kind of seems like at some point it should kind of slow down, but it hasn't. So I would say the best idea in terms of planning is that it will keep going up at this rate because there's been no stoppage or no slowdown.
It's been crazy. The last couple of years, you just kind of see that cost of tuition continue to increase. And planning for this is key. And everyone wants to go to college, and then everyone goes to college, and then they get their sociology degree, and what are you going to do with that? And so
then you go some more.
Yeah, then you go back and you get your master's, and then you go back and get your PhD. Let's move on. Let's go to Ask the Experts.
I want to provide for my young grandchild's education, but I'm concerned their parents will eventually divorce. What is the best tool to use to make sure the money is protected for the kids' education no matter what happens with their parents? This is from Rachel in Carmel Valley. Joe, what do you think? How do you protect the money?
Rachel's like, something's brewing in the household. I love my grandchild, but
I'm not so
that
sure.
son-in-law, he's out the door soon. So, Rachel, you can set up a 529 plan. You can be the owner of it, and you can have your grandchild be the beneficiary. So you can control the money and distribute it out to your grandchild. And if you were to predecease before she gets to college, you're all good. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily gift it to mom and dad and then have mom and dad be responsible for the college. Because like she's saying, well, if they get a divorce or some other things could happen in life where that money would be distributed elsewhere potentially.
Yeah, and so the 529 plan, there's an owner and there's a beneficiary. So the owner could be you and the beneficiary can be your grandchild. So there's no reason it has to go to the parents. Another thought is if, depending upon how much you think you want to fund the college education, it doesn't all have to be in a 529 plan. Just keep your own assets, right? If you want to contribute more to the college later, you can do that. I guess the key there is make sure that the funds don't go into the parent's name. Because, Joe, that's where it could get a little bit more sloppy.
Yeah, and it's her grandchild, so maybe she was thinking by the time the grandchild hits college, she might not be around. Let's go to the next question.
Is buying life insurance a good way to provide for my kids' college without impacting their ability to receive financial aid? This is from Scott in Mira Mesa. What do you got on that one, Joe?
If you buy life insurance and you fund it with cash value, right, so it's a permanent policy, will that give you the ability to get more financial aid? The answer is yes, but is it a good way to save for college? In my humble opinion, the answer is no. A lot of different variables. I think this is a big thing out there, though. There's college funding advisors, and they say, well, let's hide all your assets. Let's put them into this, life insurance, so that shelters it from any type of financial aid calculations because they're not going to look at that. And we'll build this cash value within it, and then by the time the kids go to school, we can distribute the money out of the cash value in form of, loans or FIFO tax treatment. So it's going to be tax-free distributions. There's a lot of, people sell that stuff for retirement, people sell it for college education and everything else. It can work. I'm not going to say it cannot. Is there better solutions? I think in my opinion, yes. But I guess if there's a need for the insurance and you have a lot of extra cash flow and you've already exhausted or you think that you can get a lot of financial aid, so I would check all your options, but that would probably be my last resort.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that too. I think a 529 plan is actually a better vehicle in most cases. And Joe, before we wrap up, I just want to say one more thing. There is a tax credit, American Opportunity Tax Credit for college, for-year college, up to $2,500 per year. But it phases out at incomes of $80,000 for single, $160,000 for married.
You needed to get that little tax tip in there.
I got to do a tax tip.
How about the lifetime learning credit? We can go on and on, all sorts of different credits there. But yeah, there's some tax advantages too. So if you're funding education right now, just don't forget to understand what tax credits are available to you. So I guess to wrap this thing up, to put it in a bow, first things first, right? With any type of strategy or plan, you just got to estimate what that finish line is. What is the expense going to be? What are you willing to pay? And then determine the best way to do it, right? How much money should you be saving on a monthly basis, quarterly, annual, and just to make sure that you keep up with those goals, right? And then you figure out what vessel that you want to save in. Is it a 529 plan? Is it a brokerage account? Is it a Coverdell? Or maybe you prepay it, or maybe you use the life insurance, or whatever, right? There's all sorts of different ways that you can accomplish the goals, but it's just the consistency of following the plan that you have and then making sure that you can adapt to that. But most importantly now, if you haven't started at all, today's the day, folks. Today's the day, and we can help you with that. Go to yourmoneywealth.com, click on our special offer, the ABCs of college funding. ABCs of college funding, yourmoneywealth.com. That's it for us, Big Al.
Another phenomenal show.
Another phenomenal show in the books. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you again next week.